Welcome, everyone, to the Just Economy podcast, building Florida's just economy $1 vote at a time. This podcast is sponsored by the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. We are a membership organization, a 501c3. My name is Cornell Cruz Jr. I am the Executive Director of the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. Our mission is ensuring the Community Reinvestment Act partnership, collaboration, and investment with financial institutions, getting them to reinvest more into the community as well as to the nonprofit organizations. Our four focus areas are education, visibility, advocacy, and financial growth. One big announcement, everyone knows that we do our summit every year. Summit this year will be May 1st, 2024. May 1st, 2024. Tickets will go on sale soon. You'll start getting to save the dates. This will be our last year holding the summit in South Florida. We're going to move the summit to Orlando. As a statewide organization, we got to get kind of in the middle so we can serve everyone. So we'll be moving to South Florida in 2025. But this year, as usual, we'll have great panelists. We'll have great speakers and the power of networking with the financial institutions, government, the community at large, and the social impact organizations who make a difference in our society every single day. So today, we have a very special guest, Annie Lord, who's the Executive Director of Miami Homes for All. We're going to talk to Annie in a second, but Annie's organization is doing some great work in making sure that affordable housing and housing affordability are being done here in South Florida and Miami-Dade County in particular. And we're going to get to her in a second, but Annie and I go way back. When Annie was the executive director of the South Florida Community Development Corporation, way back in the day is when
before then.
Yeah.
When I was like trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I just moved here.
Yeah. We met Annie back then. Annie's one of the is an anomaly in South Florida, born and raised in Miami, and we're going to learn a bit more about her history here in a second. But it's been a pleasure to work with Annie. Annie is the calm in the storm, so to speak, around here, especially amongst the social impact organizations. For all my yelling and screaming and cursing, Annie knows how to make the point a little bit better than I. And
just different, but not better. And by the way, this person that somehow I've known to be, who is someone called me unflappable, and I was like, my husband does not know who this person is.
Oh well, we got to bring him to work one day. We got to bring him to work one day and let him see what happens.
I save it all for work.
Yeah, we got to bring him to work one day. Let him see what happens. But Annie has been an integral part of the and the Miami Homes for All has been an intricate part of the social impact needed in our community. So without further ado, Annie Lord, welcome.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Cornell. What a treat.
Yeah.
This is the best Friday ever.
So you
Great
say.
way to talk.
See how
to end
diplomatic
the week.
she is? You
I'm
see
not
how she
diplomatic.
does it?
I'm sincere.
See how smooth? She's smooth.
No. Oh, yeah.
She's smooth.
Also,
you see it. It's coming
no
across.
one ever said about me.
It's coming across.
Smooth,
You see what I mean now, right? So Annie, like I said, you're native Floridian, native Miamian. Tell us a little bit about your history. How did you get here?
Oh, it's funny because in college, I think I really cared about the issues facing Cuba. So like, very early in college, I was like, I'm really interested in what's happening because, my mother's Cuban, and I have about half of my mother's immediate, family still lives in Cuba. And, I was very concerned about what, the poverty issues, the political issues they were facing. And, eventually, I found sort of international economic development, it was hard to break in, and I started working in local community and economic development. And I think I was like 26, and I was like, oh, this is it for me. Like I'd already finished graduate school, and I was like, I ended up working in Washington, D.C. for a local community development organization. And I was like, oh, I can live where I work, and I'm seeing the direct impact of our of our organization, like on the streets that I walk and live every day, and with my neighbors. For me, that was I got such a rise out of that, and and there's plenty of need. I was like, well, I don't need to be crossing oceans at all, and I can have an impact at a young age, and so that was. So I think growing up in Coconut Grove was a big deal for me. You know, I went to school. A quarter mile from me, half a mile from me, people were living a very different life than the one I was living. They were living. It was so visual.
Sure.
You know, I'm driving to school, which is a mile and a half away from my house every day, and I go from a place that has tree cover, you know, where the houses are bigger, nicer, and I'm going to a place where I'm telling you, like, literally no trees. The glare of the sun is something I really remember as a kid. Yeah, it was powerful. And of course, you know, those apartments, they were all those apartments that are now, like, half of them are, more than half of them are condemned on Grand Ave. But my classmates were living in those apartments when I was growing up, and they were not in good condition back then, 35 years ago, 40 years ago. So I think going to school with people who were living, first of all, looked different from me. They were, you know, the school was 50% black and 50% white. I mean, and that was really powerful because I was aware about how different it was. And I was like, there's no reason, the location where my soul landed is the reason that I'm living a different life from this person. This isn't just. And so, I don't know, I think that's why I was always very committed to it.
That is so powerful, though, Annie. How many of us grow up and not noticing our surroundings and not noticing the differences, even then, at a young age, not noticing the differences and then expounding on why is it different and what can we do to change it. That's important, you know, and I think that's the thing that kind of drives this work, drives me in a social impact organization, drives me in wanting to be involved and change the community. Just to talk about the tree cover from where you lived to a mile and a half to where others lived, you know, just the tree canopy.
Yeah, I could have walked there.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, the tree canopy alone.
Yeah.
You know, and we've talked about, you know, the issues with heat and the issues with neighborhoods having a different tree canopy and covered bus stops and uncovered bus stops.
Sure.
We've talked about those things.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Miami Homes for All.
Sure.
And tell us about your mission.
Sure. So Miami Homes for All's mission is that everyone in Miami-Dade has a safe, affordable place to call home. And we've been around since 1985. We're particularly concerned that the lowest income residents in our community have a place to live. And that's, you know, preventing homelessness, ending homelessness for people who are experiencing it has really been at the heart of our organization since our founding. And then the way that we do that, you know, is we're all about how do we affect the big systems? How do we understand what the best policies and practices are? How do we build coalition around those? And how do we advocate for their implementation? And a lot of that has to do with the public sector and, like, what policies, what funding, and what, you know, even some of the minutia and the administration of stuff, right, is very powerful and can affect thousands of households.
So, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I'm a firm believer that housing is a right. In this country, I truly believe that it should be a right. Affecting policy has got to be probably, I'm just assuming, it's probably one of your hardest items that you have to cover, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the item, it's the thing, right?
Sure.
So we are doing some pilots, you know, to demonstrate, right? Because I think it's easy to dismiss an advocacy organization as, you know, in the clouds, and they don't know what's up.
Yeah, they think we're dreaming all the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to show you that this is possible because we're going to make it happen. We're just going to show what it takes. And maybe we'll learn, you know, we were wrong in X, Y, and Z ways. But I think particularly this one initiative we have, which is to build and rehab small-scale, affordable multifamily housing in infill neighborhoods in Miami-Dade that are facing rapid displacement. The approach we're having with that is really exciting because it's not just us, first of all. Like, I mean,
please tell us about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, thanks. Sorry, that sounds like I just like handed that, like pitched you the
no, you
softball.
did.
But yeah, what I'm excited about is that we're doing it in a collaborative, and we were really thoughtful about who was going to be at that table, like who had to be at that table in order for us to be successful. And the success is defined not only as the units getting done, right? Because we could do that a dozen ways and the units will get done, right? But we wanted it to be where the development is informed by and guided by the people who are most affected, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, and we are certainly working with like organizations, so we're even a step removed from that. But we are doing community engagement in the neighborhoods and in the buildings where we're doing this development, because we don't want development to happen to people. We want them to be a part of it. We want to demonstrate that the residents having a seat at the decision-making table is good and in fact results in a better outcome. And people are happier, and there's better planning. And I think there's this fear of the populace, And I think what we've shown in our work together in Public Land for Public Good, with particularly surrounding that GSA lot, which is that big 19-acre parcel in Allapattah that is owned by the city of Miami, we did, a very concerted effort around community engagement. And it's not like folks are losing their minds out there. They know, they understand what's needed, right? They can express that in a way that is totally rational and workable, and they can propose solutions that are feasible.
Yeah. I think we spend too much time in general thinking that people don't know what they want.
Yeah, or that they don't know what's possible.
Exactly.
And that they're going to dream up something that's just not possible. Yeah. And I think with the right information, anyone would know what's possible.
But you said it earlier, is that some people, especially those on high, have the tendency to think that our heads are in the clouds, that we're gonna come out and go, oh well, we want the Jetsons, we want to be able to fly around to our apartments. Right. I want to be able to step into a vaporizer at the Publix and just boom, we hit a button and I disappear. My molecules come together in my apartment. Like we're but we're not like that. Our folks and all of us, I think we come up with sensible ideas that could be implemented, but not from a standpoint of how many dollars can I make, right?
Well, that's like a can of worms, man. The people that have profited, I mean, we could go on and on,
sure,
right, throughout history, millennia, about how people have profited on the backs of those in poverty. And that just, for me, that really I find that subject extremely gut-wrenching, because they're the legacy of people, unfortunately, who have in the name of doing right by people who were vulnerable, have stolen money. For me, that is like, that's where my brain goes haywire, and I kind of can't abide. But I do think, I think that there's, we sometimes toggle. I think you and I have experienced in the decades. I think we toggle between what we would call having vision, right? And I think you have to have that, because it has to be inspiring.
Sure.
And it can't be crazy, but it's got to be worthwhile and being incremental, right? And the change that we seek has to move kind of slowly, because what we seek is big change. And I think it can be challenging to hold both. It's not impossible, but it can be challenging to be like, we need, and housing particularly, and this is where, again, my heart rate starts to climb. I don't know why housing is the issue that just sort of gets the shaft every time.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Simply amazing when everybody has to have one.
And how powerful it is when they do. And I wanted to tell this story last night at the budget hearing, and I couldn't, because I only had 60 seconds, and I honestly, I should have just told the story. Here I go.
Feel free.
And I have permission to tell it. One of my board members, her name is Lovely Exemer, and she's one of the hardest working people I've ever met or seen. And she's a person who has struggled with so much trauma and family separation. She's a product of the foster care system. She's I shouldn't say she's a product. I mean, she has survived the foster care system, and and even in the time that I've known her, which is only since I joined Miami Homes for All, which is now 6 years ago, I've just, she's been through so much, even just in that time as an adult. But even through all of that, and when she was experiencing homelessness as a youth, She joined Miami Homes for All's Youth Voice Action Council. She joined our board. She has stayed involved. And she recently, after another bout with homelessness, unfortunately, she got placed in one of CAR4's permanent supportive housing units, and one that was well suited to her needs, right? She struggles with diabetes, so she needed a kitchen, right?
Sure.
And she wasn't, she for a time there, that was a challenge. And it was like, it was on the first floor, so she didn't have to walk up because she had a challenge with an injury. And when I tell you that, I'm telling you, like, maybe even the day that she found out she was going to get it, like, I could start to see things change. Like, she just seemed...
Whole attitude changed, right?
Oh, the whole...
Mindset.
I mean, her mindset, like, her whole tone of voice, her energy, where her thoughts were. Her thoughts seemed to be... And I asked her this a day or so ago. I said, can I tell this story? And this is what I've observed in you. And she said, yeah, absolutely. Her thoughts were kind of in the past. She was... she just seemed so heavy and weighted down by what she has been through, and worried about her future, obviously. And then she went from that, I'm telling you, it was like from one day to the next, future thinking, calling me about, hey, I got a better job. They're going to pay for my tuition if I go back to school. I want to learn blah, blah, blah. Can I pick your brain about how we get... She's like thinking about her aspirations. She's about her aspirations, not
Changed
about her
whole
past.
life.
And she's about, how can I help my niece and my nephew? They just went through something terrible. I want to support them. And I asked her yesterday, how's it going in your apartment? She says, I love where I live. I'm so grateful to CAR4 for how much they support me and what I'm trying to do in my life. And it is powerful. And I'm thinking to myself, I think that's a story that it seems so obvious to us. I was telling somebody and they were like, well, yeah, duh, Annie. I was like, yeah, you and I think that. But I think other people think that the mental health is most people think that when people don't have housing, it's because it's a mental health issue or because
it's their own fault.
And then, of course, and it's their own fault. When I so often see it's the reverse. What's so amazing and inspiring to me, why I think housing is the thing I think I should spend my puny speck of dust life on in this world, is because I see that it's the housing that's driving the mental wellness and the behavioral wellness and the physical wellness. So
you just feel differently when you got a roof over your head. And you're not worried about if you're going to be, if you're not worried about if the roof, you're not going to have a roof over your head tomorrow. Long term, you got a roof over your head. You just feel differently. I mean, all the times that I've moved in my life, I can honestly tell you that I felt every time I moved, every time I changed duty stations and I went to my new place, and I knew I had I wasn't worried about, having a place to live.
Right.
But I felt a new...
Stressed.
You felt a new passion. You felt when you walk into a new place.
Oh, I see. Right.
You just feel differently.
Invigorated.
Yeah, you just feel differently. And just to think of a person who's gone through all the trials and tribulations that she's gone through, to have her own place and knows that, okay, I'm not worried about where I'm sleeping tomorrow. Yeah. I'm not worried about where I'm sleeping next week. I'm not even worried about where I'm sleeping next month or even the next year. I have a place. That feels differently to anybody. When you think about all the people who buy a new home, and that first time you walk in that new home and you're staying there for the night, you feel the difference. So those folks who are homeless, those folks who are going through trials and tribulations, those folks who don't know where the next meal or if they're going to have a roof over their head tonight, think of how they feel when they're solid. You got a solid foundation.
Totally,
like that's a great story.
Anne. And I think, and also, like, this woman works so hard. I'm telling you, the night shifts at Amazon, like in the warehouses and stuff, and she's in service, right? And she's, she's worked at Starbucks a long time. She's been at the airport. She's been at Burger King. She's been at Dunkin' Donuts. She's got multiple jobs. She's driving all over the county. I'm thinking to myself, this poor woman is like, how is she holding this up? Because she's working off, and I'm just, it's not like she's not trying, that's the thing. I think this is a woman who can give back she has so much to offer, and I'm just so proud of her and excited for her.
I agree with you, and the story that needs to be heard. This is the type of story that should be heard at the county commission.
Yeah, I know, and I blew it, man. I blew it.
but the problem was they were only going to give her 3 minutes, 60 seconds or most 2 minutes. But that's a story that needs to be heard, so she can
think of so many stories like hers.
And she's the culmination. She's not the only one. She's the culmination of a lot of stories that come together like that. I mean, that go into they get housing, and then they have the opportunity. Okay, well, look, I have a chance now. Everything else kind of comes together. The job comes together. The transportation issues that we have in Florida you don't feel nearly as bad about it, right? Because, okay, I got a job. I got a house that I'm going to at the end of the day that I can actually rest my head. Makes me feel differently. It makes me look at the issues here differently. Makes me want to, and then being a part of Miami Homes for All, she says, okay, I'm not the only one, and I know that there's others out there. Annie, how can I help? And she comes. That's the people that we need to be. That's why I call them social impact organizations. Right. Miami Homes for All has affected society one person at a time. Just that one person, but now that one person wants to give back, and that's what's key about this being social impact. I want to talk to you a little bit about collaboration, and I know you guys have put together several programs, and you talked about collaboration earlier, in order to achieve the goal of these homes, right, or the opportunity for homes. So, has collaboration been a challenge?
It's so funny. That has not been my prevailing experience. It's not been a challenge. I think the collaboration, now, you got to design it right. And sometimes it doesn't work. And,
sure.
and we, like the first time you encounter somebody who's like maybe a little, like hard to work with or whatever, and it's going to be hard for like anybody, right?
Sure.
Like and those people, God bless them. They do good things, but like sometimes they're just people who don't collaborate very easily or very well. And it can be very trying. And I just tell my team, there's always going to be somebody, and they're either like right in your circle, or they're adjacent, or they're impeding, your objective or whatever. So like just accept that, and then let's do what we can, And so no, I have found the collaboration to be so invigorating, and I know like. We had this like narrative for a really long time about like Miami nonprofits love to go at each other.
Yeah.
That is an experience. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but.
But I think a lot of it has changed over the years.
I think so. Yeah.
When I've spoken in other counties in Florida, and we've talked about, there's one particular area, Central Florida in particular, has a reputation for not working, the organizations not working together. And I've had those conversations with them up there, and I've said, we had that problem. We were there.
Yeah,
we were definitely there. We were there. But over the years, we've gotten better at it. One has been driven by grants, foundation money, things of that nature, requiring us to work together.
True.
And then we learned from that, and now we don't. Practically nothing goes in South Florida. No issue that the social impact organizations get involved with goes without partners, I think.
I think that's right.
So
I think it's leadership too.
Yeah. Of course.
I think we got great leaders. I'm so impressed. I think I'm working. I mean, honestly, I think I'm working in the best place in the country.
Yeah.
Like,
well, especially as far as challenges go, we're number one. It's not like
our unique value, our unique competitive advantage is like how crazy we are.
Yeah, it's not like we're bored. We definitely got stuff to do. We definitely have stuff to do. So, I mean, working together and knowing we got a problem, building the collaboration. Now let's move on to policy. As you guys, as Miami Homes for All works for policy, are you find that you're being listened to and executed, or is it just? It doesn't feel. I know you get frustrated at times. It doesn't feel like, okay, Andy, okay, we heard you. Yeah, right. See you. I couldn't put it any other way.
Like I feel like silence speaks 1,000 words in this case. Sure. I don't know. It's like my inner nerd. My like just inner child is. I was like, why did I have to pick the least popular subject? Just staying true to my forever self. It's just of course. Unpopular AF. I think this is challenging because this is where my incremental brain and like my acceptance of this being a very long journey of building champions up and recruiting support and friends. It's like, what is my dream? Yeah, that it's the cool kids issue. You know what
Yeah.
it may never be that quite, but it will be. I'm realistic in that this issue will be hijacked and usurped for other purposes, but we could maybe get some, I think that's unavoidable, right? Because there's just too much money to be made.
Agreed.
And it's too tied to other things. So it's you got to look at, I'm trying to look at it as realistically as possible and sort of move us in the direction incrementally. But I think some of the things that we go up against, and this does break my heart. And I don't want to, I'm trying not to fall into traps of never knowing how to message on this issue without being sort of the bleeding heart. It's got to speak to everybody in different ways. But I think that this is challenging because it speaks to people's, this issue is so tied up in race and in an unspoken way.
Sure.
And you can
in a very spoken
about
way.
it. Well, maybe also, right? But you can talk so much about affordable housing and never touch on the subject of race. But I do think it comes down to it. And I don't have to tell you that. I know you know. But I think I'm pretty surprised how often I still have conversations with people who I know better, who even work in this space. Their bread and butter is affordable housing. And they're still really challenged to think about people who work in the service industry, who are going to be lower income.
Sure.
And at least in people's mind, are going to be more likely to be Black or brown. And so someone working in a hotel, someone who is working in a restaurant, someone who is on a construction site, someone even in childcare and elder care, working as a medical assistant. These are all essential to our economy. Those are the positions that are being created in the largest numbers for the next decade, and they all pay less than $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And that you can talk with people all day long about affordable housing, and they will never think, they won't think about those people. They will think about and those people may be in their lives all around them. You know what I mean? So a high net worth person might be they've got childcare, they've got elder care, they have someone coming to cut their lawn. And I don't mean to center the person. Wash their cars, serve them in the restaurant, bring them coffee at the office. Or serve them at the hotel where their clients are staying, right?
Sure.
These are drivers of our economy where we have competitive advantage in the country. People are moving here not because the jobs are here. They're moving here for the lifestyle because their job will allow them to live here.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we don't think about who is powering that, I think that this is not answering your question exactly, but I've digressed. But I think if we don't think about who's driving that, what is that workforce comprised of? Who is that workforce comprised of? And what do they look like? What do they experience? Where are they living? And where did they come from? And then, and what is the color of their skin? Because if we don't think about that, we are avoiding them and we are ignoring them. So I think that, and we're certainly not driving resources towards them. So I think that our version of a housing and homelessness crisis could look different than, say, a San Francisco. Right now, it's sort of, I'm glad people are like, oh, one of the risks we face is we could be San Francisco, where you've got tens of thousands of people living on the street. And I'm like, yeah, that is a real risk here. But I think also this could drive our economy to a halt in our local economy. So I struggle because I think I share with people like you a vision for people walking around happy. I think of Lovely walking down the street. I think of her parking her car or getting off the metro rail and walking over to her job, which is near a Publix, and she's going to pick up some groceries on the way home because she's going to cook herself dinner at her apartment, and she's not unsafe on the street. She is not. She doesn't have to. She doesn't have to share in the burden of the concern for someone who is, panhandling or begging or who is sleeping on the street, right? Not that that's the concern is for the person who has to be on the street, but she's not passing someone who's living that experience, right? That's not the experience that is taking place in our community. And I imagine a really happy, vibrant, growing place. And I also conversely imagine this like pretty scary thing all the time.
Oof.
So how do you go if you're holding those things in your mind? It's really hard to be like, on the policy basis, I can say that Live Local Act makes great progress, because 1 year ago Sadowski was being raided and we had no property tax incentives, which we've been asking for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, but does Live Local address the needs of the people I've just described? Not much. Not as much as it should. So I think, Cornell, sorry, you've asked a question and I've sort of gone on.
No. You've answered it.
I think we have to see, as Dr. King said, the arc of the history moves towards justice. I'm sure I'm butchering that, but I think about that a lot, and I do think that is the way that we will make progress. But I am also pretty heartbroken a lot of the time.
It's so interesting that you brought that up, and we didn't get a chance. Anna and I attended an event yesterday, and she was on a panel, and they discussed a lot of things about housing, and as usual, Anna talked about the advocacy part and the meeting in the community, and the race part of it, which I struggled with yesterday because it wasn't brought up enough. The National Community Reinvestment Coalition just released a study 2 weeks ago. In that study, to close the racial wealth divide from 2023, you know how long it's going to take?
50 years.
513 years.
Right.
I get 513 years. That means my children's children still will not have racial wealth equality. And reason why I bring that up, I bring it up for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons I bring that up, that the building of generational wealth in this country starts with home ownership, starts with property ownership. That's where it starts. And if we're still fighting the same fights, as I say all the time, I'm still fighting the same fights my grandmother fought. Still. If I'm still fighting those same fights, and we have 513 years to achieve to close the racial wealth gap, we have a problem, America, and we got a problem that we got to deal with. We got to deal with now. One of the reasons why Miami Helms for All is so important in working on policy, because I think sometimes the racial aspect is ignored. I think the people who are the heart and soul of our city, and all of us are the heart and soul. We're all the heart and soul of our particular area.
But we traffic on the culture created by people of color.
Exactly, and we traffic on those who are downtrodden. Those folks who have to work 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. That especially those folks. I remember reading an article in the Herald a couple of years ago, maybe last year, that talked about a gentleman. He worked at one place in Key Biscayne, one hotel in Key Biscayne in the morning, left that, went to another one on South Beach, left that one and went to another one in Sunny Isles. So by the time he got home, it was 11 o'clock at night. So he had to get up and start the next morning and start doing the same thing the next morning. All those 3 jobs every day, and still had no health care because they were giving them less hours, so they weren't mandatory to give him health care. And he was worried about where he was going to live. And he was talking about, okay, if prices keep rising like this, I got to leave. I don't have a choice. I got to move to somewhere like Georgia. I got to move to somewhere like Alabama, even though he may not want to live. Maybe his heart and soul is here.
And some people can't.
And some
people are not going to be able to move.
Not going to be able to move.
Where are they going to go?
Yeah, and we worry, that's another thing we worry about every hurricane season.
For sure.
We know the low to moderate income don't have $1,500, $2,000 to get them a hotel, to avoid the storm coming. So they have to stay here and deal with it. So in your organization, as you work on collaboration, we talked about policy. We've talked about helping those downtrodden. How do you see us coming out of this? And I know that's a real broad question, but when I say that, are we how else can we get the folks to listen who are making the decisions, because the politicians are the ones making the decisions, which brings up another whole voting issue that I won't get into right now. As far as us is concerned, voting. The last election, Miami-Dade County, less than 41% of registered voters voted. That's unacceptable. But how do we get them to quickly understand the issues and deal with those issues immediately? Because you know me, I have no patience. So how do we get them to do that?
I'll be honest with you, Cornell. I'm still throwing spaghetti on the wall for this one because it's, I mean, I'll tell you that in the last 6 years, right, I have learned that the data does almost nothing. Right, you need the data. It's with the how horrible our numbers are. It is required, but insufficient. Right, so you can't not have good data. You have to have it, but it doesn't convince anybody. There's very few people who are motivated by that.
That's
I am the weirdo who is like, holy cow, we're missing 135,000 units for people earning up to $45,000 a year. That motivates the heck out of me. Almost nobody feels that way. They feel overwhelmed by that. They are confused by that. And that's I think that's very common. That's human, right? But
and I'm sorry to interrupt. Before you go on though, Miami Homes for All did a study 2021, summer of 2020,
and we've just updated the data, and I'm about to release it.
Okay, so go to their website and do that study. The amount of affordable housing units we need in Miami-Dade County alone. That number should smack you upside of the head and make you go, wait a minute. Something has to be done right now. And I'm sorry to interrupt your point. I know, I appreciate that. That study was
I
huge.
appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, that's our affordable housing framework, which provides a toolkit. It provides the data analysis by University of Florida, but it also provides a toolkit for policy solutions. It's very high level. And so I think our next step is to get a little more specific about.
Really? You're going to get even more specific than that?
We are. I think that, so first of all, we're updating the data, so it'll be released, in the next few weeks. And I'm happy to share those numbers, but they are staggering. They're still staggering. And I think some people do feel kind of shocked. Yesterday I repeated them, and I think I heard some like gasps, in the crowd. I don't think people realize how many jobs are going to get created that are low wage, below $20 an hour. So anyway, but I think that I don't know you asked the question that I think I've been thinking about a lot and asking myself I ask myself a lot recently, especially, which is, what is it going to take to motivate, to change minds and move people into not only high alignment, but high action. And the action,
I like that term, high action.
Yeah. And I'm really struggling with that. I mean, I'm just being perfectly honest. We talk a lot about, how can we build a power base, right? So that there's something competing with other power, that is motivating different action or action that doesn't correspond to the vision we have or the impact we want to see. What are the countervailing forces against forces that don't create affordable housing? And there's quite a few of those, right? There's a huge development industry, obviously, that is motivated by profit, and that's perfectly legal. And I don't think particularly immoral and on its face, that okay, I can turn a profit by creating housing and people want to buy it and they will buy it. And, that's our market economy. But so I don't fault a single developer for not of their own accord building affordable housing, right? But to change policymakers' minds and to have them take action that incentivizes deeply affordable housing, I think there's a lot of countervailing forces that encourage them not to do that. And so how do we build power that encourages them to do that? Power, influence, I don't know what, right? And right now, power is changing so much.
The dynamic is definitely changing.
Where does power lie? Yeah. And I've had this question posed to me a few times recently, and I was like, oh my God, that's right. Power has changed. And I'm not sure that many of us understand it. I don't understand where power is. I used to think power was all with developers and big corporations. I'm not so sure that's true anymore. Right?
Really?
Yeah. It's not. Okay, it's not the only truth. It's not the only truth.
That's interesting.
Now
that you say that.
You also have you also have power with voters, there's like politics here that are at play that are really new, or at least I'm unfamiliar with. And you have sometimes very, very few residents that are extremely influential. How much are they motivating and influencing decision makers' actions and decisions? It's unclear to me. And so what is our strategy? We've talked for almost 2 decades about, well, it's got to be about organizing and organizing voters and organizing power, and they have to show up at government center for the budget hearing or the ordinance hearing or whatever. And I think that's still true also, but it's not purely true anymore. We also need social media influencers, and you need likes on stuff. For me, as a Gen X / millennial, I'm like, likes on things. Why? So I think that what I'm unclear about what it's going to take. Some of it is like a generational shift and expectations, and what do people, what is acceptable to the next generation of leaders. I fear that when it comes to something as market driven as the housing supply, it's really easy to go in and be high alignment and ready to take, and like saying you're going to take action, and then you get there and it is so hard. And I some days I'm like, I'm going to run for office and I'm going to die in office getting one thing done, and that is to fund the crap out of deeply affordable housing, and that is the only thing, and then I will be politically crucified, and I do not care, right? Like, so what is it going to take somebody like that? Someone who's going to die on the cross of this issue.
That's interesting that you bring that up about the differing power dynamic and how. And we've talked many times about power and how do we get the power in order to change the dynamic here in Florida with housing and affordable housing. I think it's key. How do we get there? What is it gonna? Is it gonna take a consolidation? And I'm glad you said it, because I totally agree with you. I don't know where all the power lies now. Like you said, I always thought it was the developers ran the state of Florida, but I still feel that way. But I think that we gotta bring in those different ingredients in order to make this thing work. And good luck with that when you run for office and make deeply affordable housing for everyone.
I got thin skin. I would never survive.
Yeah, me and you both. There's good reasons why I don't run for office. And I say it all the time. Some curse words that I say will never be allowed in the minutes. So it's a good thing that I don't run. But I think we've had a great discussion today, and I love your passion,
so
Andy.
much.
Thank you so much. So I got one final question for you.
Okay.
So I woke up this morning, and you probably already said it. I woke up this morning and I gave you all the power in the world. What would you change and why?
I think that I guess I would create all of the affordable housing, deeply affordable housing stock in the world, and I would put it on a big pedestal, and I would tell all of the equity investors and all of the, residents who are voting for a bond, and I'd be like, here's the pipeline, go. Do it quickly. And that sounds like that's also like a one-off. I just feel like I don't know, even like, I get so concrete about it, but I'm like, I just wish that we could have 10% of every, of the units in every new building would go to deeply affordable.
Well, I would love for it to be more than 10%, but
right,
feel
exactly.
You.
I'm look at me. I'm really not dreaming, but I just wish that it was a given, given that we all understood that was good for us. It's good for us to have everybody have a place. I don't know why that's such a hard pill to swallow. Anyway, not to end on a down note. No, I would just I would raise all the money, and I would, and I think there's a way to do it without sinking us all into some weird, crazy debt, apocalypse. I think we can do it, and it would pay for itself.
Agreed. So, Thank you very much, Annie.
Thank you so much,
Here's
Cornell.
here's what I want you guys to take away from this, and Annie's going to give her contact information and website here in a second. But that study that they did, if that study doesn't make you sit up and go, wait a minute, we got something drastically wrong, and with those numbers, 135,000 units we needed, and that was a year and a half ago, right?
Yeah, that's the updated number. So for households earning up to 45K, we need 135,000 rental units today. But and then here's the thing that blows my mind. Can I just go like one more wonky thing?
Mm-hmm.
When you go up the income spectrum, that number starts to shrink. So as you get to include higher income households, once you get up to 120% median income, I mean like $120,000 a year for a household.
Yeah.
We only have a shortage of 17,000 units. So it's the problem that we have is for much lower income households. That's where we need to focus, and it is not where we've been focusing.
If that doesn't alarm you, I don't know what else to tell you. A hurricane is coming, and then the hurricane is already here, and we're being blown around, and water is $18 a bottle. That's how it is right now, and we got to solve this. We got to solve this tremendously. So, one final thing, Annie, please give us your contact information.
Thank you. Yeah, you
organization.
So MiamiHomesForAll.org. All spelled out, and you can contact me off that website. But ALORD@MiamiHomesForAll.org. That's my email. And thank you, Cornell. What a treat to be with you, and thank you for all the great work that you do.
No, yours too. I think we do some great things together, and Annie and I serve on several committees and together, and trying to do some things in the community in order to make a social impact, which is what we are supposed to do. Again, thank you very much, Annie. We greatly appreciate it. I don't look forward to seeing that study because I don't want to see those numbers again. But I know it's needed for the shock
necessary
people.
but insufficient.
That's that heart monitor thing. When you're having a heart attack, you need to be shocked. Read Annie's the Miami Homes for All website and check out that report that they've done. If that doesn't shock you, again, I don't know what will. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for watching the Just Economy podcast. We welcome our guest today, Annie Lord, the executive director for Miami Homes for All. This is the Just Economy podcast, sponsored by the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida, building Florida's just economy, $1 one vote at a time. We will see you next time. Thank you very much.